Hey everybody, it is June 20th, 2021. It is Sunday and it is Father's Day. I hope that all the dads out there have a wonderful day and feel love from their kids and family and so forth. God gave dads an important role to be the leaders, the heads of the family, and to really work in partnership with their wives to bring their children up in Christ. So it's quite an undertaking for a parent to lead our children. But dads out there, I know, and I just want you to know that you have the ability because you have Christ living inside you. So even when you think you can't, that is especially when you need to turn to God and just say, I don't think I can do this, but I know with you I can, so I need you with me now. Just be blessed today. Be blessed. And those of you that have lost your dads, I am so sorry for your loss. Losing a parent is very difficult, and grief and loss is hard, but we have the great comforter in God, and He can bring you peace and comfort if you surrender it and turn it over to Him. And those of you that are waiting to be dads, just keep praying on it, and God will answer you. Now, I'm not saying that He's going to deliver a child into your life. I'm saying that He will answer your prayer with His will for your life. And as we pray and just be open to whatever it is that God gives us, and be pleased with it, and not think, oh God, why can't I have that? Let's not be the toddler that throws the tantrum because somebody else has what we think we need, what we think we want. But God knows what we need. God knows what we want, and we need to rest that He knows what He's doing, and that we don't have to be God over our own lives. My name is Bria Doan. This is Fit Your Ministries, where we are traveling through this Bible in chronological order in the year 2021. So today is June 20th, and I was just thinking back as I was saying that, I was thinking back to January when we started this endeavor, and I don't know, I thought it would be easy. I thought I would just get it, to read, and sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to do this, to come to you, to read, but it is so rewarding, and it brings me such joy to be able to do this. So it's worth the hard work that it takes, and that's life, right? That much of what we do, much of what we have is worth the hard work that it took for us to be where we are, to have what we have. We can just rejoice that God gave us the ability to do the work, right? To do the work. So we are in 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles. Today, we're going to be 2 Chronicles chapter 25. And 2 Kings, we're going to be in 13 through 15, jumping around just a smidge, not too much. And then, y'all, we are in the book of Jonah. That's right, Jonah and the whale. Here we go. So super excited about starting a new book. You know how I get when we start new books in the Bible. But I wish these kings of Israel and Judah would just see what they have and see that it takes hard work to follow God's plan. And maybe it would have looked different. But see, God already knew that they weren't going to do what He wanted and follow Him wholeheartedly. He was prepared for that. So He's prepared. He knows that we're going to mess up. But He is a God of love and forgiveness and grace and mercy. We do not have to condemn each other or ourselves.
mother's name was Jehoadan. She was from Jerusalem. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, but not as his father David had done. In everything he followed the example of his father Joash. The high places, however, were not removed. The people continued to offer sacrifices and burn incense there. After the kingdom was firmly in his grasp, he executed the officials who had murdered his father, the king. Yet he did not put the children of the assassins to death, in accordance with what was written in the book of the law of Moses, where the Lord commanded, "Parents are not to be put to death for their children, nor children put to death for their parents. Each will die for their own sin." He was the one who defeated 10,000 Edomites in the valley of Salt and captured Selah in battle, calling it Joktheel, the name it has to this day. Then Amaziah sent messengers to Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, the son of Jehu, king of Israel, with the challenge, "Come, let us face each other in battle." But Jehoash, king of Israel, replied to Amaziah, king of Judah, "A thistle in Lebanon sent a message to a cedar in Lebanon. Give your daughter to my son in marriage." Then a wild beast in Lebanon came along and trampled the thistle underfoot. "You have indeed defeated Edom, and now you are arrogant. Glory in your victory, but stay at home. Why ask for trouble and cause your own downfall and that of Judah also?" Amaziah, however, would not listen. So Joash, king of Israel, attacked. He and Amaziah, king of Judah, faced each other at Beth Shemesh in Judah. Judah was routed by Israel, and every man fled to his home. Jehoash, king of Israel, captured Amaziah, king of Judah, the son of Joash, the son of Ahaziah, at Beth Shemesh. Then Joash went to Jerusalem and broke down the wall of Jerusalem from the Ephraim gate to the corner gate, a section about 400 cubits long. He took all the gold and silver and all the articles found in the temple of the Lord and in the treasuries of the royal palace. He also took hostages and returned to Samaria. 2 Chronicles chapter 25, verses 1 through 24. Amaziah was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 29 years. His mother's name was Jehoadan. She was from Jerusalem. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, but not wholeheartedly. After the kingdom was firmly in his control, he executed the officials who had murdered his father the king. Yet he did not put their children to death, but acted in accordance with what was written in the law in the book of Moses, where the Lord commanded, "Parents shall not be put to death for their children, nor children be put to death for their parents. Each will die of their own sin." Amaziah called the people of Judah together and assigned them according to their families to commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds for all Judah and Benjamin. He then mustered those 20 years old or more and found that there were 300,000 men fit for military service, able to handle the spear and shield. He also hired 100,000 fighting men from Israel for 100 talents of silver. But a man of God came to him and said, "Your Majesty, these troops from Israel must not march with you, for the Lord is not with Israel, not with any of the people of Ephraim. Even if you go and fight courageously in battle, God will overthrow you before the enemy, for God has the power to help or to overthrow." Amaziah asked the man of God, "But what about the 100 talents I paid for these Israelite troops?" The man of God replied, "The Lord can give you much more than that." So Amaziah dismissed the troops who had come to him from Ephraim and sent them home. They were furious with Judah and left for home in a great rage. Amaziah then marshaled his strength and led his army to the valley of Salt, where he killed 10,000 men of Seir. The army of Judah also captured 10,000 men alive, took them to the top of a cliff, and threw them down so they were all dashed to pieces. Meanwhile, the troops that Amaziah had sent back had not allowed to take part in the war raided towns belonging to Judah, from Samaria to Beth Horon. They killed 3,000 people and carried off great quantities of plunder. When Amaziah returned from the slaughtering of the Edomites, he brought back the gods of the people of Seir. He set them up as his own gods, bowed down to them, and burned sacrifices to them. The anger of the Lord burned against Amaziah, and he sent a prophet to him who said, "Why do you consult this people's gods, which could not save their own people from your hand?" While he was still speaking, the king said to him, "Have we appointed you an advisor to the king? Stop. Why be struck down?" So the prophet stopped, but said, "I know that God has determined to destroy you, because you have done this and not listened to my counsel." After Amaziah, king of Judah, consulted his advisors, he sent this challenge to Joash, son of Jehoahaz, the son of Jehu, king of Israel. "Come, let us face each other in battle." But Jehoash, king of Israel, replied to Amaziah, king of Judah, "A thistle in Lebanon sent a message to a cedar in Lebanon, 'Give your daughter to my son in marriage.' Then a wild beast in Lebanon came along and trampled the thistle underfoot. You say to yourself that you have defeated Edom, and now you are arrogant and proud. But stay home. Why ask for trouble and cause your own downfall and that of Judah also?" Amaziah, however, would not listen, for God so worked that he might deliver them into the hands of Jehoash, because they sought the gods of Edom. So Jehoash, king of Israel, attacked. He and Amaziah, king of Judah, faced each other at Beth-Shemesh in Judah. Judah was routed by Israel, and every man fled to his home. Jehoash, king of Israel, captured Amaziah, king of Judah, the son of Joash, and son of Ahaziah at Beth-Shemesh. Then Jehoash brought him to Jerusalem and broke down the wall of Jerusalem from Ephraim gate to the corner gate, about a section 400 cubits long. He took all the gold and silver and all the articles found in the temple of God that had been in the care of Obed-Edom, together with the palace treasures and the hostages, and returned to Samaria. 2 Kings chapter 13, verses 12 through 13. As for the other events of the reign of Joash, all he did and his achievements, including his war against Amaziah, king of Judah, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Jehoash rested with his ancestors, and Jeroboam succeeded him on the throne. Jehoash was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. 2 Kings chapter 14, verses 15 through 16. As for the other events of the reign of Jehoash, what he did and his achievements, including his war against Amaziah, king of Judah, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Jehoash rested with his ancestors and was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. And Jeroboam, his son, succeeded him as king. 2 Kings 14, verses 23 through 27. In the 15th year of Amaziah, son of Joash, king of Judah, Jeroboam, son of Joash, king of Israel, became king in Samaria, and he reigned 41 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord and did not turn away from any of the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit. He was the one who restored the boundaries of Israel from Lebo Hamath to the Dead Sea, in accordance with the word of the Lord, the God of Israel, spoken through his servant Jonah, son of Amittai, the prophet from Gath-Hepher. The Lord has seen how bitterly everyone in Israel, whether slave or free, was suffering. There was no one to help them. And since the Lord had not said he would blot out the name of Israel from under heaven, he saved them by the hand of Jeroboam, son of Joash. Amaziah, Second Chronicles chapter 25, verses 25 through 28. Amaziah, son of Joash, king of Judah, lived for 15 years after the death of Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, king of Israel. As for the other events of Amaziah's reign, from beginning to end, are they not written in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel? From the time that Amaziah turned away from following the Lord, they conspired against him in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish. But they sent men after him to Lachish to kill him there. He was brought back by horse and buried with his ancestors in the city of Judah. 2 Kings chapter 14, verses 17 through 22. Amaziah, son of Joash, king of Judah, lived for 15 years after the death of Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, king of Israel. As for the other events of Amaziah's reign, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? They conspired against him in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish. But they sent men after him to Lachish and killed him there. He was brought back by horse and buried in Jerusalem with his ancestors in the city of David. Then all the people of Judah took Azariah, who was 16 years old, and made him king in place of his father Amaziah. He was the one who rebuilt Elath and restored it to Judah after Amaziah rested with his ancestors. 2 Kings chapter 15, 1 through 5. In the 27th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Azariah, son of Amaziah, king of Judah, began to reign. He was 16 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 52 years. His mother's name was Jecoliah. She was from Jerusalem. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father Amaziah had done. The high places, however, were not removed. The people continued to offer sacrifices and burn incense there. The Lord afflicted the king with leprosy until the day he died, and he lived in a separate house. Jotham, the king's son, had charge of the palace and governed the people of the land. 2 Chronicles chapter 26, verses 1 through 15. Then all the people of Judah took Uzziah, who was 16 years old, and made him king in place of his father Amaziah. He was the one who rebuilt Elath and restored it to Judah after Amaziah rested with his ancestors. Uzziah was 16 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 52 years. His mother's name was Jecoliah. She was from Jerusalem. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father Amaziah had done. He sought God during the days of Zechariah, who instructed him in the fear of God. As long as he sought the Lord, God gave him success. He went to war against the Philistines and broke down the walls of Gath, Jabneh, and Ashdod. He then rebuilt towns near Ashdod and elsewhere among the Philistines. God helped him against the Philistines and against the Arabs who lived in Gur-Baal and against the Meunites. The Ammonites brought tribute to Uzziah, and his fame spread as far as the border of Egypt because he had become very powerful. Uzziah built towers in Jerusalem at the corner gate, at the valley gate, and at the angle of the wall he fortified them. He also built towers in the wilderness and dug many cisterns, because he had much livestock in the foothills and in the plain. He had people working his fields and vineyards in the hills and in the fertile lands, for he loved the soil. Uzziah had a well-trained army, ready to go out by divisions according to their numbers, as mustered by Jeiel, the secretary, and Maaseiah, the officer under the direction of Hananiah, one of the royal officials. The total number of family leaders over the fighting men was 2,600. Under their command was an army of 307,500 men trained for war, a powerful force to support the king against his enemies. Uzziah provided shields, spears, helmets, coats of armor, bows, and sling stones for the entire army. In Jerusalem, he made devices invented for use towers and on the corner defenses, so that soldiers could shoot arrows and hurl large stones from the walls. His fame spread far and wide, for he was greatly helped until he became powerful. 2 Chronicles chapter 26, verses 16 through 21. But after Uzziah became powerful, his pride led to his downfall. He was unfaithful to the Lord his God, and entered the temple of the Lord to burn incense on the altar of incense. Azariah the priest with 80 other courageous priests of the Lord followed him in. They confronted the king and said, "It is not right for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to the Lord. That is for the priests, the descendants of Aaron, who have been consecrated to burn incense. Leave the sanctuary, for you have been unfaithful, and you will not be honored by the Lord God." Uzziah, who had a censer in his hand ready to burn incense, became angry. While he was raging at the priests in their presence before the incense altar in the Lord's temple, leprosy broke out on his forehead. When Azariah the chief priest and all the other priests looked at him, they saw that he had leprosy on his forehead. So they hurried him out. Indeed, he himself was eager to leave because the Lord had afflicted him. King Uzziah had leprosy until the day he died. He lived in a separate house, leprous and banned from the temple of the Lord. Jotham his son was in charge of the palace and governed the people of the land. Jonah chapter 1, verses 1 through 16. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that port. After paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord. Then the Lord sent a great wind on the sea, and such a violent storm arose that the ship threatened to break up. All the sailors were afraid, and each cried out to his own God, and they threw the cargo into the sea to lighten the ship. But Jonah had gone below deck, where he lay down and fell into a deep sleep. The captain went to him and said, "How can you sleep? Get up and call on your God. Maybe he will take notice of us so that we will not perish." Then the sailors said to each other, "Come, let us cast lots to find out who is responsible for this calamity." They cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. So they asked him, "Tell us, who is responsible for making all this trouble for us? What kind of work do you do? Where do you come from? What is your country? From what people are you?" He answered, "I am a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land." This terrified them, and they asked, "What have you done?" They knew he was running away from the Lord because he had already told them so. The sea was getting rougher and rougher, so they asked him, "What should we do to you to make the sea calm down for us?" "Pick me up and throw me into the sea," he replied, "and it will become calm. I know that it is my fault that this great storm has come upon you." Instead, the men did their best to row back to land, but they could not, for the sea grew even wilder than before. Then they cried out to the Lord, "Please, Lord, do not let us die for taking this man's life. Do not hold us accountable for killing an innocent man. For you, Lord, have done as you pleased." Then they took Jonah and threw him overboard, and the raging sea grew calm. At this, the men greatly feared the Lord, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows to him. Now the Lord provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. From inside the fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God. He said, "In my distress I called to the Lord, and he answered me. From deep in the realm of the dead I called for help, and all your waves and breakers swept over me. I said, I have been banished from your sight, yet I will look again toward your holy temple. The engulfing waters threatened me. The deep surrounded me. Seaweed was wrapped around my head. To the roots of the mountains I sank down. The earth beneath barred me in forever. But you, Lord my God, brought my life up from the pit. When my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer rose to you, to your holy temple. Those who cling to worthless idols turn away from God's love for them, but I, with shouts of grateful praise, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed, I will make good. I will say, salvation comes from the Lord. And the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto dry land. Jonah chapter 3, verses 1 through 10. Then the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. Go to the great city of Nineveh and proclaim it the message I give to you. Jonah obeyed the word of the Lord and went to Nineveh. Now Nineveh was a very large city. It took 3 days to go through it. Jonah began by going a day's journey into the city, proclaiming, 40 more days, and Nineveh will be overthrown. The Ninevites believed God. A fast was proclaimed, and all of them, from the greatest to the least, put on sackcloth. When Jonah's warning reached the king of Nineveh, he rose from his throne, took off his royal robes, covered himself with sackcloth, and sat down in the dust. This is the proclamation he issued in Nineveh. By the decree of the king and his nobles, do not let people or animals, herds or flocks taste anything. Do not let them eat or drink, but let people and animals be covered with sackcloth. Let everyone call urgently on God. Let them give up their evil ways and their violence. Who knows? God may relent and with compassion turn from his fierce anger so that we will not perish. When God saw what they did and how they turned from their evil ways, he relented and did not bring on them the destruction he had threatened. Jonah chapter 4. But to Jonah this seemed very wrong, and he became angry. He prayed to the Lord, "Isn't this what I said, Lord, when I was still at home? That is what I tried to forestall by fleeing to Tarshish. I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. Now, Lord, take away my life, for it is better for me to die than to live." But the Lord replied, "Is it right for you to be angry?" Jonah had gone out and sat down at a place east of the city. There he made himself a shelter, sat in its shade, waiting to see what would happen to the city. Then the Lord God provided a leafy plant and made it grow up over Jonah to give shade for his head, to ease his discomfort. And Jonah was very happy about the plant. But at dawn the next day, God provided a worm, which chewed the plant so that it withered. When the sun rose, God provided a scorching east wind, and the sun blazed on Jonah's head so that he grew faint. He wanted to die and said, "It would be better for me to die than to live." But God said to Jonah, "Is it right for you to be angry about the plant?" "It is," he said. "I am so angry, I wish I were dead." But the Lord said, "You have been concerned about this plant, though you did not tend it or make it grow. It sprang up overnight and died overnight. And should I not have concern for the great city in Nineveh, in which there are more than 120,000 people who cannot tell their right hand from their left, and also many animals?"
So today we read the book of Jonah in its entirety. So he was a minor prophet. We're going to be reading about a lot of prophets in the coming weeks. And this was, he lived in the northern kingdom of Israel, and in the reign of obviously King Jeroboam II. So this is not the same King Jeroboam the first one. This is King Jeroboam II. And now God calls to Jonah and says, I need you to go to Nineveh. And what does he do? He chooses to run instead. Now Nineveh was they had their own idols. They were not practicing, serving the Lord, the God of their ancestors, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. And Jonah he did not want to go. He was not pleased that God had called him. And so he gets on a ship going in the opposite direction, getting as far away as he can. He ends up in Tarshish. Now, what's amazing is that while on this ship, the great storm comes, and Jonah's like, yep, that's me. That's God punishing me while I'm on this ship. And the sailors on the ship have more compassion for Jonah than Jonah does. Like, they feel as though if we throw him overboard, he will die. And they don't want to do that. And so they cry out to God. Remember that they were worshiping their own gods before all of this happened, right? Early in Jonah, we are told that. And now they are turning to God. And, I'm sure you guys have heard God turns all things for our good, right? For our good and for His glory. Like, this was for His glory. Look, you do as I say, and I will calm the sea for you. And they did just that. And He calmed the sea, and those men ended up being faithful to the Lord. Now, we don't know what happened after they returned home, but we know in that moment, in this part of the story, that they were followers of God. So Jonah ends up in the belly of the whale. Now, there are lots of connections between Jonah being in the belly of the whale and Jesus and his crucifixion and resurrection. So this story kind of alludes to Christ's resurrection. And he ends up going, so, like, how many times have we run from what God has told us to do only to end up doing what God has told us to do? And if we just listened the first time, we wouldn't end up in the belly of a whale, right? So sometimes we just need to be obedient and follow what God is telling us to do. So God gives him this second chance to go and do what he has been called to do. And God will do that with you as well. So Jonah ends up in Nineveh. Nineveh is about 30 to 60 miles. So remember, it said that it would take him 3 days to go through the city of Nineveh. So it was a large city. And he's going through, and he gets to the king, and he tells the king all of them put on sackcloth, which is their demonstration of mourning. They call out to God, and they do a huge fast, and they are turning their eyes to the Lord. And so God spares them. And this makes Jonah mad. This makes him mad. He believed that Nineveh should have had what's the word I'm looking for? Not justice, but judgment passed down on them. Like, how quickly he forgot what God had just done and the mercy he had for Jonah while he was in the belly of the fish. And it's almost you can see pride there, that he believed that mercy was for him and his people, but not for Nineveh. Nineveh shouldn't be allowed to have the mercy of God. So God teaches him with this plant, and that you didn't reap and sow this plant yourself, just as you didn't Nineveh. Nineveh is mine to decide what to do. This is what God is saying. Because God is a God for everyone, not just for you and me, but for everyone. And sometimes we see people and we think, oh my gosh, they're such sinners. But God is for them. Jesus came to save those that were lost, not to preach to those that were saved. And God is the same. He pursues those that are lost in addition to walking with those that are already believers. So we see Jonah running from God and really being disobedient. And y'all, we can't run from God. It's impossible because He is everywhere. He is omnipresent. It doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter if you think you're hiding, you're not. He's there. He can see you. He knows you by name everywhere you go. So God will always provide for you, even when you're disobedient. Jonah was disobedient, yet God provided this whale, this big fish, to be his refuge during the remainder of the storm. It kept him safe from dying, from drowning. So I know that there have been times in my life, and I'm sure there have been times in your life where you have run from God. And in that moment, we feel like life is overwhelming us, is overtaking us. And it's never too late for us to turn back and ask for God's assistance. So for our prayer to God today, I just would like we're going to go back and read the beginning of Jonah. And I want you to just feel yourself as Jonah while I read this prayer again as our prayer to the Lord today. Father, I cried out to you in my great trouble, and you answered me. I called to you from the land of the dead, and Lord, you heard me. You threw me into the ocean depths, and I sank down to the heart of the sea. The mighty waters engulfed me. I was buried beneath your wild and stormy waves. Then I said, oh Lord, you have driven me from your presence. Yet I will look once more toward your holy temple. I sank beneath the waves, and the waters closed over me. Seaweed wrapped itself around my head. I sank down to the very roots of the mountains. I was imprisoned in the earth, whose gates locked shut forever. But you, O Lord my God, snatched me from the jaws of death. As my life was slipping away, I remembered you. And my earnest prayer went out to you in your holy temple. Those who worship false gods turn their back on all your mercies. But I will offer sacrifices to you with songs of praise, and I will fulfill all my vows. For my salvation comes from you alone. Thank you, Father, for the truth in this prayer. In your name we pray. Amen. Friends, I hope you have a wonderful and most blessed day today. And I will see you right back here for a brand new book that we will be into. So, can't wait to see you then. Bye, guys.